now you say world computer because Ethereum introduces programmability and then store of value. Well, this is the goal and success metric of bringing all this global economy to Ethereum. And then ETH as an asset on that network will be very, very natural space for majority of institutions or people that will use network. I started talking about this 5 stages of, first of all, Ethereum L2s to win over all the alternative L1s. The second stage is actually to start servicing these network effects to all the L2s. The first stage was really starting to bring all the alternative L1s to Ethereum network as L2s. The fourth stage is really showing that within all of these network effects, ETH as an asset is really so important that is seen as something that clearly competes with BTC. Well, positive, I think that there'll be space for both. And then the fifth stage is really looking at Ethereum as a global economy, and where everything moved, everything is represented as tokenized digital assets. You have automation of global economy, probably through integration of AI flows, bots or agents and the markets. And suddenly we live in this totally different new model of economy, and we replace traditional finance, we merge traditional institutions to Ethereum.
Here we are with Tomasz Stańczak, the co-executive director of the Ethereum Foundation. Tomasz, it's so great to have you here on the Defiant podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. And thank you for having me.
Of course. Really excited to have this conversation. Ethereum has been, a main focus of coverage for the Defiant for many years, since we started the newsletter in 2019, when really all of DeFi was happening on Ethereum. It was mostly an Ethereum newsletter, and then it kind of branched out as the DeFi ecosystem grew. And what's been happening on Ethereum recently, like I was saying before, I think it's really significant and very important. So I'm looking forward to hearing the reasons behind some of these shifts from Tomasz firsthand. But a bit of background very quickly on Tomasz. Tomasz was the founder of Nethermind, one of Ethereum's main clients. He was very early team member of Flashbots, and he's been co-leading the EF since recently. The foundation has shifted to focus to a faster protocol development, more transparent treasury management, and other changes that we'll talk about in the podcast. So like I mentioned, we're witnessing this shift in Ethereum. Really important for the entire blockchain ecosystem, with Ethereum being the second largest blockchain. And it came after increased pressure from the community from many months. A lot of it, I think, was driven from just ETH price underperformance, but I think there were many different issues that were raised. So I'm curious to hear from the foundation perspective. Of course, you were listening to all of this feedback. What were kind of the criticisms that really stood out to you as, okay, these are the things that we need to take action about?
Sure. The major criticism for the foundation at the beginning of this year was mostly around communication, about the communication of strategy, direction, communication also about the internal communication between the management team and all the team leads. So the clarity of information flows. And all of this was started addressing one after another. Some of those was so simple, like just being a bit more open, start looking at what things were not transparent, reverting roles a bit within the foundation organization structure. The other aspect of communication was how we communicate with L2s. Like we were hearing that the L2s versus L1 is some kind of competition, that the L2s are a danger for Ethereum, and that was simply not true. We are celebrating now successes of L2s. We should be delivering this very strong message that, yes, the roadmap for scaling through L2s, roadmap for innovation with L2s, it's very, very important aspect of Ethereum and its network effects. And I think that the moment when there was a lack of voice of communication coming from Ethereum Foundation that was strongly defend that roadmap and that strategy, that's when many of the L2s started feeling a bit awkward, like how how they can really trust that there is a very good relationship going forward. And addressing this was very important for the success of the entire ecosystem, for the builders that were starting getting confused where to build. Is it fine to build on L2s? Should we only build on L1? And delivering that message from the foundation, the message of confidence, the message of, yes, L2s is great scaling, but also we deliver the scaling of L1. And we started talking about those 3 points of acceleration for the short-term goals, not only the long-term goals. We've heard from many people, long-term goals and the end game is the only thing that EF thinks about. And we say, sure, this is very, very important. And it's always the underlying aspect, the same as when we talk about privacy and security, censorship resistance, all of this is there, but we sometimes communicated too much only about this. And we heard about this ivory tower, Ethereum only researchers only thinking about the end game, but not thinking about application layer, about the use cases, about the next 6 to 18 months, about the scaling and the needs for communication with L2. So all of this required fixing. The last thing would be probably comments about taking advantage of the opportunities that appear in the enterprise space with financial institutions after the changes to the regulatory environment in US in November, about the presence in US, about presence in the meetings with the policymakers, or simply not coordinating it or driving it, but simply being there. And Ethereum Foundation was seen as really avoiding enterprises, avoiding talking to the policymakers. And what we had to address was to just make sure that we're available, that we're open to conversation, that we can appear at more of the financial industry events and so on.
So from this kind of review of community criticism, what have been, if you can just summarize briefly, what have been the main actions that the EF has taken as a result of that?
Sure. So a few things. Apart from restructuring the protocol teams, so previously called Protocol Research and Development, we simply renamed it to Protocol and restructured the teams to align with these 3 major directions: Scale L1, Scale L2, Scale blobs for L2s, and improve interop and UX. So we required from ourselves to have the major focus on those directions by understanding that also hardening the protocol always is an underlying thing. And on the side, we have the larger initiatives like $1 trillion security, where we talk about, well, you should have like easily on Ethereum, either a single fund that stores $1 trillion of assets on Ethereum mainnet, or you could have 1 billion users storing $1,000 on the Ethereum network. So all of this scenario should feel ultimately extremely secure and safe, and it should feel like this network is absolutely the safest place on earth to store assets. And it already is the safest network and already has this history of never stopping for 10 years now. But we want to show that we never stop thinking about it, and that we'll always keep improving. It keeps improving on security, on supporting privacy and censorship resistance. And it comes as a request from enterprises as well. Like the institutions come and say, we really want it. We care about this global neutral aspect of Ethereum, censorship resistance, for access to markets, security of our assets. So $1 trillion strategy initiative, very important. And now we soon will be publishing the next steps after surveying a lot of industry people and ecosystem participants. And we have fantastic leaders, security leaders that will push changes and suggestions and introduce standards and improvements. And then recently also for the transparency, treasury policy, we wanted to be seen as the team, like the foundation that really starts being more friendly with DeFi, with everything that is being built on Ethereum, the application layer, and start supporting DeFi by, well, both supporting and guiding DeFi. So the treasury policy talks about how we allocate the Ethereum treasury, ETH that we are holding in treasury. Also how we guiding DeFi more to this new term, DeFi Punk, that says, well, DeFi, but DeFi with privacy, with self-custody. And the same as for L2s, maybe it's in the past, we've seen the journey, right? Journey through all the challenges towards decentralization. I think DeFi applications will be going the same direction. I'll see more and more sovereign, like individuals deploying their own assets on DeFi. What else? Well, changing ecosystem development at Ethereum. So the restructuring is already happening. You see you see hiring now. So definitely we want more people that will accelerate everyone in the ecosystem, all the way from being interested to Ethereum to building, getting funded, building, deploying, and being successful with the applications. So that acceleration of application space.
And that's through grants and funding, or how exactly?
So in the past, Foundation, I think mostly was focusing on grants. Like, so you would apply to the foundation asking for grants, for money. And well, very often you would hear, what else can we do for you? But also very often you would have a process that would take maybe a few more days to answer a question, or probably weeks. I don't know the details, but for sure I've seen that situation was taking longer. And it will be only about, do you get support or not in the financial terms? Or maybe not only, but I want to strengthen the message of Foundation can do so much more. Like introduce you to the networks, help you with mentors from the Foundation, connecting you with people that were successful in building and funding, introducing you to accelerators, incubators, introducing you to a broader network of Ethereum with different L2s and how they can help you in your physical location geographically with the local communities, strengthening the local community hubs that either deal with this entrepreneurship aspect or maybe with privacy aspect. So all of that should be very often not that much money focused, but helping you to if you get other grants, to be so much more effective with the money that you have. And that was my experience as well in the past, the building Nethermind and receiving the grant, but also knowing how to use this grant most effectively. Very often when you're building a company, you get a grant and you immediately think, oh, so I hire one person, it will solve all my problems. And very rarely it's like this. Very often it's much more useful for you if you get introduced to other people and being told how to solve some problems.
Right. Okay. So the 1 trillion security plan, using DeFi, like the new DeFi punk term as part of that, accelerating Ethereum builders through not just grants, but broader support, and anything else that's kind of like the main like activations or like actions that you've taken so far.
Yeah. So as mentioned, the entire restructuring of the protocol team was a really big delivery and took a lot of conversations internally and externally. So these are actions that are already mostly finished. So let's say that the grants ecosystem development, it's still being delivered. So this probably will take a month more to bring the right people on board and expand our visibility there. There are a few more things that are ongoing. So a lot of things that are ongoing. So we have probably a list of 200-300 items that are collected from various conversations with people in the ecosystem. This is one thing, that communication, it's lots of small things of going to the events, jumping on calls, being on podcasts and collecting.
I know you had like an open Calendly or something, right? For people
Definitely,
to just like jump on calls with you. That's definitely a shift from before.
Yeah, I think I had around, now probably counting would be around 400 calls since 2 months ago.
Wow.
That span across VCs, builders, Solidity developers, privacy-focused builders, the institutions, so banks, funds, the builders in the space, like strategically building around Ethereum, so interop protocols, all of those, like reaching out and making sure that people can share with us what they think the Ethereum strategy should be. That helps us a lot to be the best, most informed team that can help others and again start connecting, and because of being neutral, just accelerating people talking to each other and being a bit like a dispatcher. So that matters for sure.
The PR Genius is a top crypto PR and growth marketing agency, helping brands globally with expert PR and strategic growth marketing. They've worked with 300 plus projects like Movement Labs and IO.net. Unlike traditional agencies, they charge only on performance. Their services include earned PR opportunities and marketing services to help boost wallet holders and organic X followers. Learn more at www.theprgenius.com.
And I think, to me, one of the most interesting like strategic decisions or at least the way you communicated it was the shift to scaling or the refocus on scaling the L1. Because I love your thoughts also on this criticism, but you also mentioned that L2s are extractive to the Ethereum mainnet, or if not extractive, at least not contributing as much as they should have. And I think this came because we saw, essentially because Ethereum was successful in its plan to scale via layer 2s. And all of this economic activity started happening on layer 2s, but not on Ethereum mainnet. And so the ETH burn that we saw before coming from all activity on mainnet started, decreasing until it went away. Ethereum was inflationary again. People started getting nervous with ETH underperforming. And so they were like, should ETH L1 pay some sort of or charge some sort of tax to L2? Should the kind of blobs be restructured? Should there be some kind of canonical L2s? Like all these kind of questions and suggestions started emerging from this concern. So yeah, I love your thoughts on this criticism, and is the new focus on scaling L1 a result of this concern?
Yeah, sure. So when you think about Ethereum's strengths, for sure the first thing is that it's globally neutral, security-oriented, privacy-supporting, censorship-resistant chain. Everything is open source you built there. This is the strength, and you have this programmability added to the very strong definition of blockchain and asset. The other strength of Ethereum was that we practically chose as one of the first chains, or let's say delivered really the successful L2 structure, and the structure of the chains that are scaling the space of Ethereum and can onboard millions of users and do that through some sacrifices, but at the same time borrowing the security from the Ethereum chain. And it's not easy, and there are still things that are remaining for the Ethereum mainnet to strengthen, right? Like we have to keep improving on how the interop is supported. The DA layer has to be absolutely best as a platform for DL2s, and many other things. Now, at the times when we didn't communicate that clearly, that secondary strength of scaling for the L2s and the fact that we were ahead, like delivering for the institutions' ability to customize and control a bit more and be a bit more cautious before they would come to mainnet, those L2s, those solutions. So it was opportunity to attack that, to weaken the Ethereum as a network, as a solution. Not attack in a very negative sense, but attack as a point out as a potential weakness, something that really I think is Ethereum's strength. And that's what was happening. And there was no response really from Ethereum saying, no, look, we're feeling very strong here. And many people got scared thinking like, oh, maybe some L2s will just like walk away from Ethereum, will not need L1 and will just become competitors. Where is all that value of Ethereum? Where is the marketing of Ethereum as a network? You're just seeing marketing of the L2s. L2s are competing with each other and the builders don't know where to build. So that was the message, but it's simply the message that comes back from us now is, look, no, build on L2s. This is part of the Ethereum network. We have to push the L2s to keep getting stronger on the aspects of L2 beat, the decentralization, security aspects of L2s, that they really follow the requirements to be seen as secured by Ethereum. This is very important. But for a moment, we were kind of not controlling it, and people would say that branding of Ethereum is weakening because everybody can just claim it's L2 on Ethereum. L2 beat was there, but we lost maybe confidence of saying, look, L2 beat, clear guidance, it'll be even clearer over time, there'll be interop, it'll really feel like it's one. So that was the case. I would say the other aspect of it is fees accruals to Ethereum mainnet. So you'd hear a lot of questions about how over time Ethereum can really ensure that there is a value accrual to the mainnets, right? So the mainnet becomes a hub of all the activity on L2s. How do you ensure that L2s actually feel this network effect? And for a moment, some people, researchers would think, you have to push the fees up. Like you have to start making L2s pay for L1. But we're not at the stage to do that. We are at the stage when L2s are actually witnessing a massive success and onboarding a lot of users. They thrive in the new regulatory environment. Institutions are connecting and looking for how to build their own L2s. We want to definitely for them to benefit from what we have wanted to achieve for many years. The super low fees, scalability of Ethereum, and the network of secured chains with Ethereum at the hub. And then we can show that actually Ethereum is the hub. It provides this network effects. And without Ethereum mainnet underneath. None of those chains can have the same success. And then the introduction of fees is something that practically in the conversations with L2s, all of them support it in different ways. Like, so they describe different ways of achieving that, like sharing the sequencer fees, paying for DA, paying for some other aspects of the network effect. But they want to do it because they understand the value, long-term value of Ethereum.
Interesting. Okay, so the strategy then is right now is the time to get more people on Ethereum L2s and not to make it more expensive for L2s and users, but just to drive as much activity as possible, just get users on Ethereum. And then down the line will be the time to think about more kind of increasing fees or like the value accrual aspect of Ethereum. But right now the focus is on just getting more users on board.
Well, we're thinking about it already. It's just we know that this is not time to implement it. So we have lots of proposals on the minimum blob fees, on the how exactly the DeFi ecosystem of the highest value liquidity and highest value trades, as notional trades, how they flow through L1, and what we have to deliver to ensure that it's always having its space for the Ethereum mainnet as a hub. So we're thinking about it. It's not time now, because now is the time to scale and allow L2s to get this very stronghold position if we can find any other alternative L1 and continue building the ecosystem that carries those values of Ethereum. And having the impact matters, because without having an impact globally, we cannot really carry those values that we all believe in.
Is there a North Star that you're looking at in terms of when you can say, okay, now we've scaled enough, let's look at some of these kind of fee proposals?
Oh, the North Star. Yeah, I mean, I think that $1 trillion security proposal ended up feeling very, very convincing for the North Star. When he said $1 trillion assets from a single fund of 1 billion users with $1,000, this pretty much started being very convincing as a North Star. It's either massive onboarding of lots of people, both actually. Massive onboarding of so many people in the world using the network for daily transactions with privacy, permissionlessly. And then also the largest institutions in the world feeling that this is the system for integrations between themselves and for storing the assets. And this really makes Ethereum as a network thrive, being at the center of all of this. And this also means that the sum of all the fees that will be paid by the network like this, with that many users, with that high value flows, should be incredibly high.
1 trillion security, does that mean 1 trillion of ETH staked, 1 trillion TVL in like ETH and L2s, or how exactly is that measured?
No, the thing that we talk about is $1 trillion in a single smart contract, single application by a single operator of a fund.
Oh, wow.
So it's like a TVL of a single application, not total TVL of all the applications on Ethereum.
So when a single application reaches 1 trillion in TVL, then you'd say we're good. We can start thinking about other things, about fees and so on.
We didn't state it like this, but I think that it could be convincing. It sounds pretty fair. It means that, look, we're showing the security on the highest level. People understand, they have confidence in the network. And I say both these, and you have 1 billion users on Ethereum. But 1 billion users on Ethereum, we'll see how quickly it happens. If you mean all the L2s and ones together, well, it could be possible within 2-3 years, I think.
Interesting. Okay. And then on the L1 scaling plans and roadmap, what are the specific milestones that you're looking to? I don't know, like in this year and more kind of the near term or medium term.
Sure. So those milestones are like the guidance from Ethereum Foundation and the researchers, and you will see a lot of people questioning them in the context of, oh, will it be safe to go there? And this is very important to make sure that it's always safe. But we set the ambitious goals, but should be achievable. They're ambitious, but also achievable. Of 100 million gas per block this year on mainnet and 300 million next year. So that second aspect, the 300 million, feels much more demanding, but also I expect that the researchers and engineers will find solutions that are for nowadays are not yet available and not well known, but we already know some paths that point us in that direction. We see a massive progress of ZKVMs, improvements in research around statelessness. However, this one still, we'll be asking questions of how quickly statelessness is progressing. So this is one thing. On the blobs, we say 8x the blobs this year through the Fusaka deployment with PeerDAS. And then we didn't commit to any number for the further blob increase next year, but we should have the expectations that simply the A layer will evolve into something that is best in class among all the DA layers. However, maintaining, like best achievable with maintaining the proper decentralization security components. And the last thing on the interop and UX, we start building metrics for what to achieve. And it's slightly harder. So we're still doing a lot of research now on how to define perfectly the goals around interop and UX. Because qualitatively saying it should feel like one chain is okay, but not okay enough. It doesn't give the engineers and researchers clear goals of that this is how we'll track it, this is how we'll measure that. I encourage everyone that has some measures for that, for the UX and interop, to give us hints. We have some ideas and we note it down already and we already share it with the internal teams, but I don't think it's perfect enough or good enough to share publicly, and we have to work on it a bit more.
Get 20% APY on ETH with the High Growth Vault by Kelp in one click. HighGain uses blue-chip DeFi strategies with restaked ETH across Aave, Pendle, Usual, and Elixir, managed by strategy pros Ultra Yield and Upshift to deliver highest rewards on ETH, all in just one click. Deposit your ETH, receive HighGain ETH, and stay liquid in DeFi. Trade or use HighGain ETH on platforms like Pendle and Balancer while still stacking rewards. Follow along these steps to get started.
Okay, there's one theme that I find super interesting, which is the tension between the world computer vision and the store of value vision. And it seems from what you're seeing right now, the focus is more on the world computer vision than the store of value, or not. Like, I'd love to hear your thoughts, because especially this year, it seems like Bitcoin has really dominated the store of value narrative. Nations are buying Bitcoin for their reserves. Companies are buying Bitcoin reserves. The dollar is down and Bitcoin has decoupled from that. And, there's kind of this growing narrative that Bitcoin has a shot at replacing the dollar as a global store of value. And with Bitcoin really dominating here, becoming entrenched, can Ethereum compete with that, or will that come later? What are your thoughts?
I think many times we've seen Bitcoin being recognized first and then Ethereum coming and being almost like an extension and an improvement of some aspects of introducing programmability, was saying, people would discover Bitcoin in various contexts. So obviously people understood that Bitcoin was there for payments, for store of value, started being accepted for custody institutions, and now start being widely accepted as something that is allowed, that is now actually fair to use even with regulators' approval. And I think it's the same with Ethereum, that it goes through all of those stages, but each time is being seen as like, this is extension, I can do so much more here. And this means that definitely Ethereum has massive opportunity here. The moment when it starts being added by the same institutions that first integrate Bitcoin, and then they look at Ethereum and they think, this is even more I can build here. But massive respect for the Bitcoin and its achievement of like spreading the blockchain idea with all the institutions around the world. And now you say world computer because Ethereum introduces programmability and then store of value. Well, this is the goal and success metric of bringing all this global economy to Ethereum. And then ETH as an asset on that network will be very, very natural space for majority of institutions or people that will use network. I started talking about these 5 stages of, first of all, Ethereum L2s to win over all the alternative L1s. The second stage is actually to start servicing these network effects to all the L2s. The first stage was really starting to bring all the alternative L1s to Ethereum network as L2s. And the fourth stage is really showing that within all of this network effects, ETH as an asset is really so important that is seen as something that clearly competes with BTC. Well, positive, I think that it'll be space for both. And then the fifth stage is really looking at Ethereum as a global economy, and where everything moved, everything is represented as tokenized digital assets. You have automation of global economy, probably through integration of AI flows, bots or agents and the markets. And suddenly we live in this totally different new model of economy, and we replace traditional finance, we merge traditional institutions to Ethereum. And then obviously, because if it's there, securing that network, being used for staking, for collateralization, all of this matters.
So the vision is Ethereum becomes a global store of value as a result of Ethereum becoming the rails for the new financial order.
I think so, yes.
For the global economy. But if ETH is used to pay for transactions on this global economy, is it more useful that ETH remains, less volatile? It's cheaper. It's not seen as some like scarce asset, but just like as more like a utility than a store of value, or can it be both things at the same time?
Well, I think that the aspect of volatility, well, you measure it always as a component of volatility against something, right? So over time, with the global economy on Ethereum, like everything changes really. I think that this global network for economy requires a lot of review of how the economical relationships look in like all the aggregates. So yes, I think this will be the result, that it will be just very powerful economy that will allow all the existing currencies to thrive on, but also will place the ETH as the center of security of that network.
I also wanted to double click on a part of this vision that I don't think I had quite heard like this before, that you want to kind of onboard alternative L1s onto Ethereum as L2s. So would that mean like you expect Solana to become an Ethereum L2 in the future?
Maybe. So I guess it would be their decision. But I would say for now, we expect that many of the L2s on Ethereum will reach that stage of being super performant and like very high quality venues for trading. And then we'll see like how many of the competing L1s will not be too late to take advantage of this network effect. I guess yes, we could imagine this future, and I don't think that it was rejected by Solana leadership, but would be best to ask them about these plans.
That's fascinating. I'd love to hear their thoughts on that. So do you think like the end game is a world where there's Bitcoin and Ethereum, and those are the two main blockchains, and maybe there's like other like really smaller ones, but Bitcoin and Ethereum are the two chains that concentrate all economic activity?
Yes, I think that Ethereum is at the hub, but at the same time, you also have all the L2s that exist, and probably for many use cases, they seem a bit more independent, but somewhere there underneath, they do borrow that security of the main hub, main chain. That's the kind of winning condition, or like winning vision, and that's what we have to deliver technologically. And probably what is most important is to understand that we have to have this network as the most secured, most like censorship resistant network, globally neutral, because otherwise it just doesn't work. So this is part of the delivery, to never give up on those values. And I think it's pretty obvious in the Ethereum ecosystem. Yeah, but what you describe is what I imagine happens in the future.
Interesting. Okay, so you mentioned these core values, security, decentralization, but we've seen time and again that users don't always prioritize these things in the same way that blockchain developers do, right? So you see more centralized chains gain a lot of market share because they can offer higher throughput, cheaper transactions, and they're competing with Ethereum for use cases and developers and funding and so on. So in a world where most users don't care about decentralization, and while that's Ethereum's main priority, how do you balance those two things to get to your end goal of, having all of blockchain users on Ethereum?
I think I always fight that statement that users don't care. I think users care a lot. It's just depending on the situations they will assign different value to those aspects because, for example, on the privacy side, like almost everybody needs privacy sometimes. It's just like almost nobody needs privacy all the time. But it means that just you want to make sure that when you're integrating long term, that you have a solution by default will provide this privacy, or that will at least allow you to enable it very easily, because you don't want to switch to a different network every now and then when you really need to care about the privacy or the trade. And then you have lots of users on the institution side that care about it a lot. Then whether it's institutions or users, there'll be different times when they care a lot about decentralization. In the long term, they all care a lot, all the time. Now, in the short term, maybe less. But again, if you integrate a network into global economy, you want to make sure that it works like this by default, that it never fails, because you cannot just build the decentralization within a few days because you suddenly need it. So it has to be there for the rainy days. And it's the same for censorship resistance, access to the markets. Like you don't want to have over time manual regulations and sanctions and so on. You want all of this to be automated and allowing permissionlessly all the institutions, all the users to participate in the market in a fair way. So they ask about it. They care. I go to institutions, every single institution says like, yeah, like we're choosing it because of security, because of censorship resistance. Our customers are asking about it. And then you look at the forums, at Twitter, and people are really vocal about security and censorship resistance. So those people who are shouting about it on Twitter are the people that are caring about it. We all use messaging apps, well, whether it's Signal or WhatsApp or Telegram and many others. And, for some reasons, majority of those apps are actually advertising privacy features and security. And even recently you've seen, I think so, Elon Musk talking about the security features, privacy features added to the messaging layer on the X platform. So if those big players decide to advertise those components and add them by default, it means that people care. And if it was not there, they would use other application, even if it was slightly more clunky. So I think users care, and that's also probably why the success of Ethereum, why it's thriving so much.
Goat Network is the first sustainable BTC yield chain, powered by decentralized sequencers using multi-coin POS. Goat's mission is to transform BTC and Doge from passive holdings into active, yield-generating assets through a one-of-a-kind economic model that tokenizes sequencer revenues, unlocking the full potential of BTCFi and MemeFi in a way that's never been done before, and creating new yield opportunities for Bitcoin and Dogecoin holders. Supply BTC or Doge, earn BTC in perpetuity. Get started through our user rewards onboarding portal, onepiece.goat.network.
I think for enterprises, for large transactions, absolutely people will care about decentralization and security. But I'll just name the chains. Like you see Tron driving most of stablecoin volume, which is, of course, extremely centralized. Same with BSC, Binance Smart Chain, driving a ton of volume on the same scale as Ethereum for stablecoins. And, those are kind of the non-enterprise users, kind of users in emerging markets, developed economies who are more price sensitive. And again, like maybe decentralization is like a second and third priority. But I guess, your argument there would be, we have all these big players on Ethereum. Eventually, they'll bring everyone else along or something along those lines.
That's exactly what will happen. Yeah. So you will have, now you see some large stable coins, like the large TVL and stable coins on Tron, but it's moving in the Ethereum direction. And it's like all the new deployments that will be happening now from the larger institutions will most likely all come to Ethereum. And at least this is the direction that we see. This is the trend that we see when we look at the charts. So those numbers are really promising. And the decisions that are being made by those institutions, because Ethereum is decentralized, secure, and privacy oriented, censorship resistant. So they're choosing this, and then it stays as a default as well. And the individuals start using those stable coins on Ethereum, or start launching their own solutions for payments on Ethereum. So I think this is the stage in the future that yes, everything will be on Ethereum. So you mentioned stable coins, you mentioned Tron, but you mentioned also BSC, and here as well. I think that over time BSC will be like extremely interested in furthering decentralization and strengthening the security of the chain. So that seems only so natural for BSC to becoming much closer to the Ethereum chain, as like nowadays it's a EVM chain. It's practically reusing much of the technology stack of Ethereum, and it's very easy to start integrating it with the Ethereum mainnet. That's what will happen.
Interesting. Okay, then I do want to get to the new Treasury policy document, which I thought was so interesting. And first thing that I wanted to clarify, I guess like the core metrics that you're going to be looking at now is operational expenses should be 15% of Treasury, and you need to have 2.5 years of runway. And those are kind of the two key things. So in terms of Treasury, I think kind of the main focus of like the Ethereum community in the past with the EF has been the EF's ETH sales, right? Like it always seemed like you guys had, or not you, but like the EF had perfect timing. I knew exactly how to like when to sell the top, and that was like very unnerving for Ethereum holders. So now I'm wondering, does this new policy mean that there will be no more opportunistic ETH sales unless those ratios fall below the 2.5 year mark, or even not even then, because maybe you'll be using DeFi, you won't need to sell? Just like clarify the ETH sales part of it.
Yeah, sure. There are multiple components of it. So one is definitely there'll be yield from the ETH deployed to the DeFi protocols, which should lighten a bit of the burden of expenses every year on the Ethereum treasury. As for the ETH sales, they will happen for sure. And just to build that 2.5 runway, the ETH sales will have to happen. And you see the policy suggesting that there's like quarterly assessment of the sales for the quarter. I think you should see maybe over the next year or so, or maybe slightly longer, building up some of that reserve. And this is thinking of the long-term Ethereum Foundation security in the context of regulatory changes and so on, where maybe you change the environment of sales. I think that the world is progressing into seeing digital assets such an integral component of the global markets, that it should not be happening, but still Foundation wants to be very, very much a resilient organization within the entire ecosystem. Now, how you were asking specifically, will it be opportunistic? So we're still defining internal procedures that will show how to implement this policy. And I believe that it should be very clear that there are some standards in general in finance of how to execute sales like this, and we'll pay all the attention to make sure that the proper standards of not affecting the markets will be implemented. They'll still require the specification of how exactly the finance teams at Ethereum Foundation can execute it. And ideally, in my opinion, they should never involve anybody on the management or board taking those decisions, but simply follow some guidelines and take people that are specializing in treasury management.
Makes sense. Okay, I'd love to focus on the DeFi side of the treasury policy. So you mentioned that right now the strategy is to use staked ETH and wrapped ETH deposited in DeFi lending protocols, and that you are considering other ways of using DeFi. If you could dive a bit what's your thought process on the different DeFi strategies and use cases you're thinking about?
Sure. So big aspect of allocating ETH will be staking protocol, self-staking actually should be a big part of it. We'll see probably if we self-stake, then there should be also exploration of maybe like geographical distribution of nodes. This is to be executed by the DevOps teams or the infrastructure teams at the foundation. And then there is aspect of DeFi becoming much more friendly to DeFi, and also both acting as a supporter of DeFi by simply being a customer to DeFi protocols and deploying more liquidity there, but also as a as a guiding light of how to go to achieve those properties of DeFi that make it more DeFi punk style. So ensure that you support the self-custody privacy for users of those DeFi protocols, and encouraging more and more DeFi protocols to go that direction, because then they will feel that they satisfied the requirements for the foundation deployments of assets. Now, you should see overwhelming majority of this of the ETH from the foundation treasury to be deployed to the protocols with much more security already, like guaranteed security over, well, guaranteed. We know that it's always the risks are there, but with every year that the protocols seem to be more hardened, more battle tested. So that's what we'll be preferring. And then there should be some deployments in the protocols that are showing a bit more of this DeFi pang properties, but are maybe a bit younger and providing a bit of exploration. So definitely foundation will be preferring lower risk protocols, and you shouldn't see any kind of reckless behavior of trying to chase yield, but more guidance for the industry of where the high value protocols with high value security checks and the good security properties and privacy properties are. So that's what we care about, and I think it gives us additional tooling of encouraging everyone in the industry to build things properly.
Perfect. So right now, if you have deployed about 45,000 ETH in DeFi, that's roughly 120 million. Just, a slice in what I think is about 600 million, according to like Docs EF wallets. So still, a small percentage of your total funds. Is there a set percentage of ETH that you want to allocate to DeFi? Or is this it, or is there room for more?
So the exact numbers are still being, this will be those internal policies of how to execute it. But I think you could expect safely that majority of ETH will be deployed in some protocols. Some of it will be like extremely safe, basic staking, basic liquidity deployment in maybe lending protocols. But much of it would be also supporting those DeFi protocols that we were talking about with slightly higher risk profile, but well established. So now it's, I think, 750 million or so at the current ETH prices that is in ETH at the foundation. As you mentioned, some part of it is deployed, but you should expect that the majority of it will be deployed. That's my expectation. We'll still continue working with the advisors on it and defining very safe numbers to have proper risk management as well.
Sorry. Super interesting. So that means that, so right now, ETH TVL is at 150 billion. So if the EF deployed 700 million to DeFi, it would make up a considerable amount of the entire Ethereum TVL.
Well, okay. I mean, it still be under 1%, but what we could expect more that there'll be this effect of building more confidence, we hope. So Ethereum Foundation definitely can always operate as this provider of legitimacy and a very high quality reviewer and auditor of protocols, right? So verifying them in all the aspects of like the assumptions, the security of the smart contracts, and so on and so on. I'm not saying that Ethereum Foundation will always be like perfect here. Like the complexity of many protocols is very high and they get hardened over time. But that additional level of confidence should generally have like a multiplier on whatever Ethereum Foundation is deploying. So maybe this is more of an important effect. So even if we have the chunk of, let's say, 0.5% or 1% of deployment, it should maybe, I hope, would expect is like 10xing from the confidence in the markets.
And yeah, what you mentioned is really interesting. It's not so clear cut, right? Which DeFi protocols are DeFi punk, because it is a progression. Like, I speak to many DeFi founders, and of course, everyone has in kind of their end game becoming fully decentralized. But in the beginning, a lot of them are, relying on multi-sigs to have a safe stop in case something bad happens. And that could make the protocol more secure, even if it's less decentralized in the beginning. I guess, how do you weigh those things? Because I think it's very rare to find a DeFi protocol that is 100% DeFi punk.
Yes, when you look at the L2s that use ZK proofs, and you read what Vitalik is recommending nowadays for safety of those L2s, you would hear, well, ZK proofs still risky. It's a desired final solution, but in the meantime, what you have is the ability to maybe have the Security Council. So even there on the L2 security, Vitalik would say it might be safer to have this in the end, the Security Council as a multi-sig, as a whitelisting some operators. So you can expect the same guardrails for DeFi protocols and understanding that they taking decisions on the maturity of various protocol aspects, maturity of technologies used for privacy, for security. And this is definitely not like black and white and the captive place where this DeFi protocol doesn't satisfy those rules. It's a general assessment of the direction of the maturity of approach to which technologies to adopt. And, some protocols will just simply reject it and take obviously wrong decisions, and some other ones are taking some trade-offs. Definitely, this is also an invitation for many DeFi protocols to come to the foundation and ask for guidance and to ask for support in defining proper structures for their protocols.
So I'm gonna play a bit of a devil's advocate because I agree with these values, of course. Like I want DeFi to be this way, but the EF has been criticized before for being in an ivory tower, and kind of requiring these values across DeFi for the EF to deploy its funds could draw the same sort of criticism.
Well, I think we'll be very responsive to questions about what those rules are. Even as I say, not black and white, they should be clear of which direction we're going. And also we'll be very much understanding that not all of those rules are immediately achievable, and some protocol that doesn't have those aspects but has security of multiple years and very well adopted, that might be the great result as well. So I wouldn't be too worried. I understand maybe interpretation of this announcement in the context of what Foundation would be doing in the past makes people uneasy. I feel that we are at the stage where we communicate much better, and we also much more open and understanding for the successful protocols and the difficulties they have with the technology, the same way as all the blockchains are actually gradually achieving, or maybe losing for a moment and then achieving again improvements into all these critical components like decentralization, permissionlessness in general. So yeah, I think I wouldn't be worried and say that it's Ethereum Foundation responsibility to do a bit of guidance. So this is the direction which actually in the long term wins a lot of users and makes this chain win in general because of being seen as globally neutral and secure chain.
Yeah, no, I think you should just own it, the Ethereum Foundation can be opinionated and, have a view on what it wants for the protocol. But okay, so that relates to my last question. But before I do that, just on Treasury transparency, you mentioned there are these planned, quarterly meetings and annual reports. Is there the expectation of publishing more frequent reports? Hopefully, ideally, we'd get a public dashboard to see the state of EF Treasury, but if not, something more frequent than annual reports.
Yeah, dashboard would be amazing. So I think it's a generally good suggestion, because as we want to be the guiding light for what is good in DeFi and what where we verify the protocols, this would be great to show the dashboard that tells people this is where Ethereum Foundation allocated, this is under review, this is a set of protocols that we think are the standards or the leading protocols or the best designed protocols on Ethereum mainnet and L2s. So yeah, I think the dashboards, the regular reports, and I think it's not really ever our preference to not have transparency. It's just sometimes some of the detailed reports take too much time to prepare. So there might be simplified reports as this is the current assets, this is where they are allocated, but it might be slightly off, and maybe we'll be publishing them more often. And sometimes much more detailed reports, maybe once per year, or through the dashboards. So dashboards will be perfect because then you have real-time overview of everything that's happening, but also they may require a lot of efforts but this is the North Star for the treasury management for sure.
Okay, that's great to hear. Okay, and finally, are there specific protocols or use cases that the EF wants to see built versus others that it doesn't? For example, of course, there's a big focus on DeFi now, but maybe you don't want Ethereum to become a meme coin trading hub, Or I don't know, is there any sort of view on which use case you want to promote and maybe some that you don't want to promote?
I definitely personally believe in this neutral protocol, and this is of the highest importance, that anyone can build whatever they want and anyone can be successful with their ideas for applications that use the chain. And having ever expressing that I don't want something to happen on chain, I mean, just because maybe it's not interesting for me would be definitely a wrong approach. Obviously, I have general ethical concerns of anything that is criminal. That's criminal in the sense, depending on the country, you have things that are criminal but feel that it's just because of the government. But there are some fundamental things that we mostly agree with globally, and those I wouldn't like to happen on chain ever. But then it shouldn't be responsibility of the protocol builders to think about this, because it's as suddenly you would be paralyzed with building anything in the world that does. So what I want to see on chain is definitely a lot of experimentations and integrations of the future of AI, because it becomes now a great worry of so many people about what happens with AI if it's not integrated with good incentives for AI and human systems to be aligned, for the AI governance to be, if not under human control, is hybrid and in with the systems that we build that ensure privacy and security of people. So I think Ethereum is the best place where it should be built. And the sooner I see those solutions being built on Ethereum, the more excited I'll be. So I think this will be the driver of much of the new generation of builders coming and discovering Ethereum as the solution to many problems and worries of the humanity nowadays. And we see it, for example,
Absolutely.
with WorldCoin, right?
Okay, and then this is really the last question. What development should the Ethereum community look forward to over the remainder of the year? Like, what are the biggest milestones to look at?
Sure, Fusaka is the big milestone, and I think it's the major one, and other things are less specified in time. I think that you could expect maybe $1 trillion security progress as reports on it. This will be a big thing. And then question is how different components of responses to this 1 trillion security survey, how quickly those should be shipping. And some of them should be super relevant and important and big milestones of thinking, once again, we increase security of the network even further. I think some of them should be here this year. Now, beyond Fusaka, I think it's too early to tell. So you would expect the other. Okay, so the big milestone will be maybe 100 million gas on blocks this year. So now we want to see the first milestone, 60 million. It's already many client teams are signaling 60 million. We see operators signaling 60 million. So I can be just speculating and guessing where it may happen, maybe June, maybe July. Then 100 million may see some more pushback on security review, so it should be coming in line with this $1 trillion security questions. But I think that I see some confidence that 100 million will hit this year as well. And those are the biggest things on the scaling side. On the UX interop, some of the things that we'll see happening this year will be coming more still from the external operator, so it will be not yet standardized, and the foundation solutions around interop and UX might be coming early next year. The first results, we'll see. I mean, at least I don't see the dates well specified. Interop UX still inviting a lot of people to have conversations with us on the strategy around it, on the exact solutions. It's challenging, but it's also super important.
Perfect. Okay, so still kind of on the road to 1 trillion security, and we'll see how many alternative L1s join Ethereum in the meantime. But really great having you on the podcast, Tomasz. Super interesting conversation. I think, Ethereum's new focus and shift has been fascinating, and I think most of the community have really welcomed your leadership. So thanks again for joining me, and it was an amazing conversation.
Thank you so much, Camila. It was a great conversation. Thank you.